PS4 and is coming out with another game. Okay, stop doing this, PS4. Go away. Stop it.
You only say that because you don't have one.
It's too long. It's too long. We're supporting this thing, and it needs to stop. I mean, they're keeping it alive. They're feeding the virus that is eating their leg. I mean,
so let me get this straight.
Yeah.
You are fine with a company taking loyalty rewards away from people when they decide that they no longer want to produce a game. They no longer want it active. That makes perfect business sense. Those were your exact words, yes?
Yeah.
Perfect business sense.
Yeah.
But when more than half of your players are still on PlayStation 4, because your current console has actually increased in price since it launched, and you're about to launch a new one that is even more expensive, you're saying you shouldn't launch on that PlayStation 4 where more than half of your players are, but launching on that PlayStation 4 makes perfect business sense.
That's
where
this
your
part,
sales are going to come from.
This part
more
is
than
not
half
business
of your players
sense.
are there.
This is not business sense. This is PS4 is holding back gaming. I mean, if you have to develop for a lesser console, it holds it back. And at the same time, if they didn't develop so many games for PS4, people would be forced to upgrade to the next console like we have with every single generation before us. This is the only generation that has carried the last generation for so very long, and I think we need to cut the cords at some point.
Do you know when the last PlayStation 2 was made? Do you know when the last PlayStation 2 game was sold? New PlayStation 2 game. The PlayStation 4 was the current console at the time of the last PlayStation 2 game. 2 generations later. People cannot upgrade at the rate that these companies want to. We are in the biggest cost of living crisis in 100 years. Our costs increased 5-fold in 2022 and they have not come down since. They've fluctuated at this new peak, but they went vertically up on this cost bracket and then stayed up at the top. People can't afford the base PS5. It's got more expensive. It was £449 here in the UK when it launched. It went up to £500 in 2021, and it went back down to £479 in 2023. It's still more expensive than when it launched. It was an expensive console at launch. It should have come down in price. It's gone up. In Japan, it's gone up 3 times. It costs the equivalent of more than £600 over there. People can't afford to upgrade to these consoles. And the PS4 isn't a slouch. God of War Ragnarok was designed for the PlayStation 4. Are you telling me that's a terrible game? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's the closest thing to perfect we've ever had as a video game. And it was designed for the PlayStation 4. Horizon Forbidden West was designed for the PlayStation 4. And that's a beautiful graphical showcase on the PlayStation 5. There is nothing about the PS4 that is holding the PlayStation 5 back. What's holding the PS5 back is developers' optimizations for it. There's no way Gotham Knights should have only run at 30 frames per second. Easy 4K running with how much of that engine it didn't use. They just didn't want to optimize it. PS4 is not holding gaming back, and when half of your consumer base are still on PS4, by all means, release a game there for them as well. Just put some PS5 enhancements upon it for those playing on PS5. Give them the higher frame rates at a higher fidelity, like the PS5 Pro is trying to do.
Then where are my current gen games? If everything's being developed for the PS4, what was the point of even getting this console? Because it seems like this generation is the most disappointing generation of recent time, when every game seems to be developed for the past generation, the lowest common denominator, and you're sitting there with a higher denominator, and you're feeling like games should be giving you more, and instead they keep being developed for PS4 lower class consoles. It's like you want to follow the money, but at the same time you're fueling the problem, and no one's going to jump ahead if you keep catering to the lowest common denominator. But that's how the gaming industry has come. Everyone just plays Fortnite anyways, so it's really just it's a lot more niche, I think, than a lot of people give it for. They say it's a huge thing, but when over 50% of your market only plays 3 games, it's an interesting place to be in. But yeah, PS5 slowest, least games developed for this generation right now. Astrobot being one of the only games of late that I can think of developed exclusively for the PS5. If you have one of these consoles, if you did upgrade thinking you were getting a new generation of games, you can't help but be disappointed when all of these titles that are coming from IPs that are strong are still developing for the lowest common denominator. So it comes out of frustration.
There's no frustration because you're still getting that better experience. God of War Ragnarok did not run at 60 frames per second on PlayStation 4. It did on PS4 Pro, but it only did it at 1080p. But it ran at 4K 60 on PS5 because there was that power overhead. They could give it that extra. If you dropped it to 1080p or 800p, you got the 120 frames per second if you had a compatible screen. You're getting those PS5 enhancements. Horizon in 4K looks phenomenal on the PlayStation 5. You can run that in 4K on the PS4 Pro, but it's a 4K checkerboard. It's the same sort of upscaling that you're getting in the PS5 Pro. Still looks good, doesn't look as good as it does on the PlayStation 5. Or you can run it in 60 frames per second at 1440p. You're still getting a better experience on the PlayStation 5. And if you went backwards and just had to deal with the load times of PS4, you would pull your hair out personally. But if you've never experienced any different, because this was my thoughts when the PS5 was coming, I didn't feel the need for a new generation. The games that were coming were still absolutely incredible on PlayStation 4. In 2020, the final year of PlayStation 4, we got The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima within a month of one another. Like, I was eating good on PS4 in 2020. There was no real reason that I needed to upgrade. Yet, the PS5 came along and it improved those games even further because they looked the same, because they already looked absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, but I got more frames out of them, and they loaded exponentially quicker. Ghost of Tsushima had to add loading screens in because it was loading too quick and you were getting an incomplete Jin at points. It was just a cape flowing and an eyeball floating sort of thing. So, you're still getting the benefit of this generation. It's just developers need to make a choice, and some of them have chosen to only develop for the PlayStation 5. Most of them are first-party studios. It's what Housemarque did with Returnal, it's what Insomniac did with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and Spider-Man 2, it's what Team Asobi did with Astrobot. But some knew that their existing franchises, like Horizon, like God of War, they started on the PS4. So why are you going to get rid of those players who made your game such a success in the first place? You're going to honor them. I totally get it. And I am hoping that this PlayStation 5 generation, this Xbox Series X generation, lasts more than the 8 years. Because we're 4 years in, and like you say, it doesn't feel like a new generation yet. It still feels really young. So why would we need to upgrade in 4 years? I'm hoping it lasts a long time. We're at the point of diminishing returns. It's now down to developers to do something cool and interesting with the tech that's already in front of them. And if they can make it work on older generations as well, and Switch and all that sort of stuff to make a little bit more money, why wouldn't they?
Well, that is our show for this week.